Let's start with the distinction that keeps a system from turning into a pile of paint chips. A variable is Figma's stored value. It can hold a color, a number, or a piece of text. A design token is the decision we give that value a name for. I'm opening local variables and creating our first collection. 0, 1 primitives. Primitives are the raw scales. They say what something is, not where it belongs. I'm adding our neutral endpoints, color gray 50 and color gray 900, then color brand 500. Notice the naming, lowercase / separated general to specific. A real scale continues through numeric steps, like gray 100 through gray 900. Numbers survive a redesign. Names like light and dark do not. I'm also calling out the other primitive families you should keep here. Font size steps, font weights such as regular and semi-bold, line height steps, space steps, and radii such as small and medium. This compact demo stays deliberately small, but a foundation is not color only. Type and spacing belong in the raw layer too. These primitive values have one mode. They carry no opinion and designers should not pick them directly on a screen, so I scope the raw layer out of the everyday property pickers. It remains the source of truth, not the menu of choices. Now I create the second collection. 02 Semantic tokens. This is the collection designers will actually use. I add surface default, text primary, and action primary. Hear the difference? Surface tells us where. Text tells us where. Action tells us where. None of those names says white, black, gray, or blue. A semantic name containing a color is a bug waiting for dark mode. I'm adding two more ordinary variables here. Space switch offset, a number that will move a knob, and content mode label, a string that will rewrite a sentence. That is our proof that modes are not a color-only feature. There is one more tier in a mature system: component tokens. Things like button primary background, button padding horizontal, and card radius each alias a semantic decision. They let one component change without disturbing the rest. We are not building components or variants today. That is part 2. For foundations, primitives supply raw values and semantic tokens supply the roles. Next, let's give those roles two contexts. In the semantic tokens collection, I click Add Mode and name the first column Light and the new column Dark. A mode is simply another answer for the same variable name. Surface default does not become surface dark. Text primary does not become text white. The role stays stable while the context changes. That is exactly why a layer can keep one token applied and still change theme. Look back at primitives. It stays on one value column. Row values are our stable ingredients. The semantic layer decides which ingredient answers each role in light and dark. Next, we'll prove modes can move more than color. Before we connect the color roles, I'm filling in the two values that do not need a color picker at all. For space switch offset, light gets 4 and dark gets 16. This number will become the left padding inside the switch track. 4 places the knob near the left, 16 gives it room to travel right. Now, content mode label. In the light column, I type light mode active. In the dark column, I type dark mode active. These are string values and Figma can bind them directly to a text layer. Same collection, same mode change, two completely different property types. One changes geometry, one changes content. In a moment, colors join them through aliases. Here is the indirection that makes the system useful. I select the light value for surface default and choose the primitive color gray 50. In dark, that same role points to color gray 900. The role is stable. The borrowed primitive changes. Text primary does the reverse. Gray 900 for light, gray 50 for dark. That gives us readable contrast without changing a single layer name. For action primary, light borrows brand 500. In dark, it borrows the light neutral, so the link and switch stay clear against the dark surface. Every semantic color is now an alias, not a pasted color value. If brand 500 changes later, action primary follows automatically. Keep this hierarchy clean. Semantic roles point straight to primitives, not through a long chain of other semantic names. The number and string are direct mode values because they are the behavior this small proof needs. Next, we make sure Figma offers each role only where it makes sense. Scopes keep a token picker useful instead of overwhelming. I open Surface Default and leave Frame Fill and Shape Fill available. That role belongs on containers and shapes. For text primary, I keep text fill only. It should appear when I color words, not when I paint a card. Action primary gets both text fill and frame or shape fill because this one role has two real jobs in our preview: the Learn More link and the switch track. I also check the number variable supported layout use because switch offset will drive padding inside an auto layout frame. The rule is simple: scope and usage must agree. If a token is not scoped for the property in front of you, Figma cannot offer it there. Next, we'll draw the small interface these roles are about to dress. Now we build the proof on the canvas with ordinary Figma tools. I'm not styling with random colors here. I'm just creating a clear set of layers that will receive roles in the next step. First, I press F for the frame tool and drag the outer preview frame. This is our stage, not our button. I open the right panel and set a comfortable width and height. Then give it a rounded corner. The outer frame stays intentionally plain, so the card is the thing your eye lands on. Inside it, I press F again for another frame and draw the settings card. I place it with breathing room on every side. This card is the surface that will become light or dark. I name it Settings Card in the Layers panel. To rename a selected layer, I press Ctrl-R on Windows or Command-R on a Mac. I say that shortcut because naming layers is not busy work. It is how you can still find the right thing when the file grows. Next comes the small eyebrow label. I press T for the text tool, click inside the card, and type System Preview. I set it small and give it a little letter spacing in the text controls. This is a supporting layer, so it will later use the text role rather than inventing a one-off muted color. I press T again and add the main heading, Theme Settings. I make this one larger so the hierarchy reads before the details. The right panel shows the font controls while the layer is selected. In a full primitive scale, the font size and weight would be bound from the raw font families we introduced earlier. For this compact canvas proof, the important thing is that the text layers are separate and named for what they say. I press T once more for the status line. It begins as light mode active. This is not final copy. It is the text layer we will bind to our content mode label variable. When the mode changes, this exact layer will say something else, without us editing the sentence twice. I name it Mode Status with Ctrl-R on Windows or Command-R on a Mac. Under that, I press T and type Learn More. This is our visible accent proof. It has to be a genuine text layer because later I want the action role to appear in the text fill picker. I do not call the layer Blue Link. That would bake an appearance into the file. I name it Learn More, which describes its job. Now for the control. I press F for the frame tool and draw a short, pill-shaped frame at the lower right of the card. I set a fully rounded corner so it reads as a switch track. I rename it Theme Switch using Ctrl-R on Windows or Command-R on a Mac. With the switch selected, I turn on Auto Layout in the right panel. This is important. Auto Layout gives the switch an inside padding property, and that is where our number variable can work. The track will not need two manually positioned knob layers. Instead, its padding will answer the active mode. I press O for the ellipse tool and draw a small circle for the knob. I place it inside Theme Switch. If I accidentally select the card behind it, I hold Ctrl and click on Windows or Command and click on a Mac to reach the nested layer. That is a very useful shortcut when frames are stacked. I name this circle Switch Knob. It needs a different fill from the track or it disappears. Later, the track will use Action Primary, while the knob uses Surface Default. The contrast is deliberate. A switch you cannot see is not a working control. Let's tidy the stack before styling. In the Layers panel, I check that Preview Frame contains Settings Card, and Settings Card contains the eyebrow, heading, status, link, and Theme Switch. Theme Switch contains Switch Knob. Clear hierarchy matters because we are about to bind variables to different property types at different levels. I adjust the card's inner spacing by moving each text layer into a readable vertical rhythm. I use the arrow keys for small nudges. When I need a larger nudge, I hold Shift with an arrow key. That keeps the cursor movement intentional instead of dragging every layer by. This is the satisfying part. I select Settings card, open its fill row, and choose Surface Default. The picker offers it because we scoped that role for frame fill. I select the eyebrow, heading, and mode status one by one. In each text fill row, I choose Text Primary. The label still looks simple, but now it has a role instead of a hard-coded appearance. Learn More gets Action Primary from the text fill picker. Then Theme Switch gets that same Action Primary role as its frame fill. The same accent is now plainly visible in a link and a control. Finally, Switch Knob gets Surface Default, so it stays distinct from the track. Every visible fill reads like a job: surface, text, action. No layer asks for a hex value. Next, we make the little switch actually set the mode. We have one last piece: interaction. I select Theme Switch, the small pill itself, not preview frame and not the entire card. The target matters. If I wire the outer frame, every accidental click on the interface becomes a theme switch. That teaches the wrong interaction and makes a prototype feel broken. I move to the Prototype tab in the right panel. With Theme Switch selected, I add an interaction from this control. The trigger is on-click. That means the viewer has an obvious, intentional thing to press. For the action, I choose Set Variable Mode. Figma now asks which collection should change. I choose 02 Semantic tokens because that is the collection with light and dark columns. The primitive collection is not involved. It has one stable value mode by design. I set the destination mode to dark. This interaction does not repaint individual layers. It does not edit a heading, move a circle with a separate animation, or swap a duplicate frame. It changes the context for every semantic variable already applied inside this preview. Let's pause on why that is so powerful. Settings card is carrying Surface Default. Text layers are carrying Text Primary. The link and track are carrying Action Primary. The track's auto layout padding is carrying Space Switch Offset. Mode status is carrying Content Mode label. Each property already knows its role. The interaction only tells the collection which answer to use. In a production component, you might add a second interaction that returns dark to light, or place the switch inside a variant with its own state. We are deliberately not building variants today. The goal is to see the foundation before a component adds another layer of behavior. I inspect the prototype connection line. It begins at theme switch, the pill people expect to click, and it targets the mode change. No giant invisible hotspot, no whole card button. That small detail protects the interaction model as the design grows. Now the wiring is finished. When we present the prototype, watch three things at once: the colors, the knob position, and the sentence in the status label. One press should change all three because they are all ordinary variables answering one semantic mode. I press present and the car opens in live mode. The surface is light, the text is dark, the link and switch track use the accent, the knob sits toward the left, and the label says live mode active. Now I click the small theme switch pill. Watch the whole car answer one collection mode. The surface turns dark, the primary text turns light, the link and control remain easy to see. The switch pathing changes from 4 to 16, so the knob travels right, and the status line rewrites itself to dark mode active. I click it again to return to light. Nothing on the canvas was manually recolored. No second car was edited. The layers kept their roles. The mode supplied different answers. That is the foundation. Primitives hold raw values. Semantic tokens express decisions, and modes change context. Components and variants are the next part of the series. Thanks so much for watching. You just built a Figma token foundation with raw primitives, semantic roles, scoped variables, and one mode switch that updates color, position, and content together. If this helped, please like the video, subscribe for the next part on components and variants, and leave your questions in the comments. And if you want your Figma variables and your code to stay in step, my DSync plugin is linked in the description below. It is free with pro features when you need them. See you in the next one!